Thank you. So I'm Sultan, and I'm presenting today investigating the impact of annotation interfaces on player performance in distributed multiplayer games. So as you see in this video, these are time-critical games such as League of Legends, Dota 2, and all of that type of MOBA games. So in these games, there's a lot of going on. Teams need to collaborate effectively, they need to communicate and plan activities. So how do players usually do this? They usually have a combination of different communication channels such as voice, text, but also cooperative communication mechanics. These mechanics are usually enable players to collaborate directly through gameplay, such as pings and annotations, and they are able to let players to plan strategies in these games. So one of these mechanics are annotations. So what are annotations? So annotations are freely drawn line and shapes on top of the game world. So these allow players to develop strategies, but also help them collaborate effectively. While we focus on annotations in this work, prior work has recognized the importance of other mechanics, such as avatar gestures and pings in Portal 2, pings in League of Legends, and also looking at the reasons behind using pings and annotations in Dota 2. So why do we study these mechanics? In this work, we have two main reasons. Since communication and planning is important in these games, how can we enable players to have rich game-centric communication and also treat these communication channels as game mechanics that can be utilized in these games? But also, we want to look at mechanics and interfaces that can engage players or people in collaborative planning activities. So in our previous work, we looked at disaster response planning, and how can that inform the design of different games to engage players in disaster response style planning. In this work, we developed different game design patterns. These are reusable solutions for designers to create these type of games. For more details on this game design patterns, please refer back to the 2016 KaiPlay paper for more detail. So in this current work, we want to extend our understanding of these type of interfaces and mechanics. We want to look at how annotation facilitates collaborative planning in these games, how they impact player performance, experience, and also workload, and how they are used in these type of games. So to do that, we designed the team coordination and planning game. So this is a collaborative game where two players need to complete a set of different objectives. For example, they need to open doors for each other, they need to find objectives in the game world, which is the interface of the game, and also complete a set of different quests. So all of these tasks really rely on their effective collaboration. But how do players communicate in these type of games? We provided players with either text chat in these games, but also they have the annotation interfaces where they can draw free lines and shapes on top of the game world, but also they can view it in the 3D game world itself to reference it back while they're playing. So to test these annotations and see the impact of their on the performance of the players and experience, we designed two types of annotations: map-only annotations and map plus game world annotation. So based on the prior literature and also our interest in understanding these type of communication channels and mechanics, we developed these hypotheses. We expect that using annotation shorten game completion time compared to not having annotations. We expect that using map plus game world annotation would shorten game time compared to map only annotations. But also, we expect that players will use the map plus game world annotation more than the map only annotations. So to test all of these hypotheses, we run a within subject study using three different conditions. First, participants played the game with no annotations, map only annotations, and also map plus game world annotations. And all of these are counterbalanced. We want to look at the completion time, annotation usage, and also the game experience through the game experience questionnaire, and also the cognitive workload using the Nacke TLX. But also we want to look at some of the overall experience. So we did a follow-up questionnaire with them to look at how the interface is used by them and if it was useful or not, if the game was difficult, and just the overall experience. So in 2017 at the University of Waterloo, we conducted a formal study with 12 dyads for a group of people, which is resulted in 24 participants. Most of them are undergrad or grad students. So let's talk a little bit about the finding. So looking at the data, we wanted to see whether there was any correlation between the level completion time and also the secondary dependent measures, the Nacke TLX and also the GEQ. And through looking at the data, we found that the level completion time significantly correlated with the mean temporal demand and also the perceived performance success from the Nacke TLX. However, other relationships were not statistically significant. Also, we looked at the level completion time, and we found that annotation interfaces significantly impact the time that each participant spent in each of these levels compared to not having annotations. So when participants had these map only or map plus game world annotations, they were able to finish the game much faster. And connected this to some of the feedback that we got from the player experience at the end of the questionnaire. We found that players found these annotations useful and also complemented their communication effort and helped establish a new communication channel. These participants said that the annotation was useful, and when it was not there anymore, I felt like we lost the communication channel or skill. So they treated these annotations as a skill that can be fostered. So when we have these annotations in games, player will be able to develop a skill to collaborate and communicate through these annotations. Also, using annotations supported players in improving teamwork because they could communicate through the game world itself. So as this response from one of the participants, often pictures spoke louder than words, and we pointed out what we meant by drawing or annotating. So because we were describing with word, we described it relative to us. So the annotations enabled them to have a clear understanding of the objective and ground the conversation using these visual annotations. Thus, our first hypothesis was supported that annotation would impact the game completion time. But however, our secondary hypothesis that map plus game world annotation will impact it more was not supported. And we think that this might be explained by the game was not probably challenging enough for them to actually have any difference between the two annotations. However, the existing of annotation did impact them. Looking at the workload through the Nacke TLX, annotation condition had a significant impact on effort, performance success, and also marginally impacted frustrations. So players, when they had these annotations, they were able to play the game with less effort, but have a higher success perception, but also reduced their frustration in the game itself. And connected that to some of the responses that they provided. Annotation helped players to create waypoints and display them on top of the map itself. So this is kind of a tool for offloading some of the work to reduce these cognitive effort from the players. For example, yes, the annotation allowed us to map out where each box was and draw a path for the other players to help guide them. So these annotations were able to improve their teamwork together. So looking at the annotation used between the map and game world condition and map only condition, we noticed that the participant significantly used the map plus game world annotation much more than the map only annotation. And this makes sense to us through the responses that these game world annotation help identify destination and also sharing courses through the game world itself. So players are able to communicate effectively through drawing these annotations and help them communicate effectively. However, we noticed that expert players do not use these annotations. We expect that players who are experienced in playing this game already developed a communication modality that they actually do not need these annotation, and chat felt sufficient for them. However, because these annotation interfaces are not widely available in games right now, we expect that if they are, players will actually be using them, and we will talk about some implication about that later on. And thus, our second hypothesis was supported that players use the annotation more in the map-based game world condition. However, the game experience questionnaire did not have any significant impact, so we didn't see any impact on the GEQ subgrouping scores. So let's move on to some of the use cases that players had to use these annotations. So through a qualitative analysis of the types or ways that players use the annotation, we found 5 distinct use cases for annotations in games. First, real-time way guiding. So in this type of usage, one player will use the annotations to guide the other players in real time while they both are engaged in the game itself. Since one player will be able to look at the game world itself and see these annotations created in real time, they were able to coordinate activities and plan effectively. Marking location and objects, so they were able to set up different objectives in the game, but also see it in the map itself. And also interestingly, even though they had the text chat, but they actually wrote handwrite messages on top of the game world itself. So they were able to reduce the need to communicate through the text chat by drawing and writing messages on top of the game world. And also, players use these to express different emotions, such as happy or sad faces, but also other expressions that are not possible to be displayed on this screen. And finally, we found out that players send multiple annotations in short interval. So for example, as in this screenshot, players use these to kind of modify the game world itself, either through just to annoy the other players, but this is also observed in different MOBA games such as League of Legends and Dota 2 with using pings. So let's draw out the key themes in our research and connect together findings of our experiments. So the results suggest that annotations are a great tool to establish a shared understanding of game objectives, plan, and also divide objectives between the players. Players were able to build a common ground to enable them to easily collaborate with each other and reduce the need to communicate in these games, and leading them to a better team coordination and also success in these games. But also they treated these annotations as communication tools. So we expect, while we see these annotations more visible in different type of games, players will build these skills to use these annotations as a communication channel. Also, one potential benefit for providing annotations in games is that they reduce the cognitive effort and workload of the players. So instead of remembering the plan and coordinating and collaborating, and these annotations will help to reduce the communication overhead by only allowing them to connect these kind of physical actions with the language itself, and seeing these annotations in the game world itself will help them kind of offload some of that cognitive effort. Also, when annotations are visible in the game world, they kind of no longer used to collaborate plans only, but also they transform the formulated plan from a paper model to a sequence of situated actions. So they provide an understanding of how physical actions and language are integrated to perform a joint task, and also ground the communication between them. So while we observed that expert players did not use these annotations, we expect that using them in different games or making them available in these games can open up opportunities for novices to actually play with other expert players or friends that they were not able to do before. So they act as a player balancing mechanic that can be used in these games. So designers providing these annotation interfaces can help narrow the gap between the players. So what is next for this work? While this work helps us understand how collaborative planning in these games can be established through these annotation interfaces, we want to look at different communication mechanics, such as pings, and also annotations and gestures, and combining them with different verbal communications, such as voice and text, and see how that will affect the player performance and experience. We also want to look at applications for these annotations in team training, such as in esports. So currently annotations are used in mobile games by commentators and streamers to explain strategies and plans to viewers. So how can we utilize these annotations for this purpose? But also, we want to bring this work full circle by applying these insights from this work for the design of training simulations for disaster responders to help them engage in collaborative planning activities and also build their planning skills. So what is the takeaway message from this work? We found out that annotations improve team performance, they support collaborative planning, and also they minimize hindrance and offload work. But they are also used in different ways, such as in using it for real-time way guiding, marking location, handwriting messages, and also expressing emotions and negatively by spamming. So before I open the floor for questions, I want to recognize the various organizations that supported our work. A big shout out for my co-author, Ruth, Torres, Ahmed, Khalaf, and then my advisors, Zach, Toups, Igor, Dolgov, and Nacke. And thank you, everyone.
Hi, Fabrizio Guona from W Institute of Technology. Have you considered gaming proficiency in your study? Because I would expect that proficient gamers would perform better than people that are beginners to the type of games that you were testing, and that would definitely influence your results on the type of study that you were doing.
We did look at the prior experience in games, but they did not correlate with any of the kind of time completion of the game itself. Okay. However, that would influence some of the result definitely. But they did influence the usage of these annotations. So as we see multiple players who are already experienced players, they do not use these annotations. They already have this kind of build their own communication modality. But as right now, annotations are not vastly used in different games. However, when we see them available, these skills might be actually more used or kind of fostered by these players. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. Thank you for a great talk. I was wondering, a lot of communication mechanisms in video games end up getting used for abuse. Did you look at that? Did you see that that was going to be a problem potentially with this?
Well, we did not expect to see it in this way. However, we noticed that some of the players used it to kind of, as we say, spamming each other or just causing any. But we noticed that most of the people who does that is they know each other. The players already know each other, so that will not cause any tension between the players. So, however, this is one of the potential negative impacts of these communications, especially when we talk about annotations. And people usually disable them in some games, so they cannot, they don't want to see whatever other players are drawing on the game. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your speech. It was really great. I remember one paper about World of Warcraft. Authors analyzed how improvement of party search experience, like developers add the function of party search, changed the communication in the game. Like people didn't talk too much anymore in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like you to guess, to think about how do you think annotations would actually affect the communication, maybe social communication, maybe not related to the game.
Yeah, definitely that is one of the extended work that we are doing right now, is looking at how the annotation affected their communication through the text chat itself. However, for this work, it was not possible, since doing that will require a lot of work to go through these text chat and also analyzing and coding them. So, however, our extended work to look at how annotation affected these communication, comparing when these annotations are available or not, and how they affect the communication. Yeah.
Thank you.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you.